Nearly 20 years ago, Acura introduced a new entry-level SUV to America called the RDX. Now, the RDX was unique because it was a smaller vehicle which made it more affordable, but it also came standard with super handling all-wheel drive and their new VTEC turbo engine. Now, of course, over the years, the RDX grew in size and price category, which left space for Acura to introduce a new entry-level model. And today we're out here in beautiful Julian, California, because we're finally able to get behind the wheel of this. This is the first ever 2025 Acura ADX. It's built off of the same platform as the also new Acura Integra. Under the hood, it comes standard with a VTEC turbo engine, and it also is roughly around $10,000 less expensive than the current RDX. So the big question I went into, for those of you who are looking for an entry-level luxury SUV from Acura, has the company managed to build the perfect vehicle for younger buyers? Stay tuned to find out. So it's no surprise that Acura dealers and consumers have been begging the company for a smaller SUV to slot below, of course, the more expensive and now larger RDX. So before we start talking about the unique design of the ADX, let me go ahead and show you guys what's powering this thing. Because I mentioned earlier, this car comes standard with a VTEC turbo engine, just like the original RDX. Now there is a prop rod, obviously, to hold up the hood. And what you're gonna find underneath here is essentially the same powertrain that's in the Integra. It's a 1.5 liter gasoline direct injection double overhead cam VTEC turbo engine. So compared to the HR-V, which also shares a platform with this vehicle, this has the smaller 1.5 with the turbo. It's hooked up to, of course, to the company's electronic CVT, or I'm sorry, it's just a CVT, not an eCVT. So it's a continuously variable transmission. And horsepower, Acura now says it's rated at 190 horsepower and 179 pound-feet of torque. Now those power figures are about 10 less versus what you get in the Integra, which has the same output or the same engine. Acura says the tuning differences is what causes the horsepower to be a little bit lower. And like I said earlier, CVT is your only transmission option, sadly no manual, and you can take your pick between either front-wheel drive or for $2,000 extra, the company will sell you their all-wheel drive system. Although it's not the same super handling all-wheel drive that you find in the RDX and in the MDX, so it doesn't have that true torque vectoring, which shouldn't really make a difference for most people who are essentially just looking for all-weather traction. Now, fuel economy is rated at 25 in the city and 30 on the highway if you guys go for all-wheel drive. Adding or going for the front-wheel drive model will improve that MPG by 1 miles per gallon. This engine is rated to run on premium, but you should be able to run regular on it. It has about a 14-gallon fuel tank. You're looking at around 370-ish miles of range on a full tank. Now, the company doesn't quote a 0 to 60 time. I would estimate it'd be in the low to mid 8-second range, but we'll try it out when we get out on the road. Top speed for this vehicle should be around 125-ish miles an hour. And Acura didn't say this vehicle is rated to tow. The HR-V isn't rated to tow, so I wouldn't be surprised if this isn't either. And as this car sits, it weighs in at just over 3,600 pounds. So it is around 200 pounds heavier versus the current HR-V, although this vehicle has roughly around 32 more horsepower, so that's gonna obviously make a difference. But let's go ahead and close up the hood here and talk about the exterior styling for this car, because we already had a chance to see this vehicle out in LA back in November of last year, and essentially the looks of this car are pretty much what I expect. You have the corporate face of Acura, of course, their diamond pentagon grille, which has that new frameless diamond pentagon design. This is the A-Spec advanced model that we're showing you, so it's the top of the line version. It has some more gloss black accents. It has the big Acura logo there in the center. You can actually get that as an illuminated logo as part of a dealer accessory. The A-Spec Advance also adds the front camera system for the full 360 camera. And then you can see here you have their full LED headlights as standard, although they are not the same jewel eye LEDs that you find in like the Integra even or in the RDX. Instead, it's just a single projector. You do have the chicane style daytime running light with the LED turn signals. And then if you guys go for the A-Spec model, you also get the LED fog lights at the lower front fascia. My test car also has an accessory that gives you more aggressive front splitters that also are included at the rear. That's an extra couple $100 with the gloss black and the silver accents here. It definitely makes for basically the front fascia of the Integra, which is not a bad thing. I actually think the Integra was a good looking vehicle, and it kind of grafts onto the front end of the ADX quite nicely. Now this color is their newer color called Urban Gray Pearl. It's kind of like a warm gray. It has some beautiful metallic flecks in the actual paint when the sun hits it. And moving around the side profile, this is where the ADX can be a little bit confusing in terms of its dimension, because Acura says this is their entry-level subcompact SUV, but when you look at the proportions, this thing is actually bigger than the original RDX by about 3 to 5 inches. At an overall length of 185.8, it's actually around 6 inches longer than the HR-V, which also shares this platform. It's around 8 to 10 inches longer than most of its rivals, and it's only 2 inches shorter versus Acura's bigger RDX. So this is a big vehicle proportionally. It has a 104.3-inch wheelbase, and this vehicle is around 72.5 inches wide. So it's, again, got a 4-inch shorter wheelbase than the RDX, which kind of makes the overhang for the front and rear a little ungainly in my eyes. But let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. My particular test car, being that this is the A-Spec Advance, also has a gloss black 19-inch wheel. So Acura offers a choice between an 18 or a 19-inch wheel. The regular A-Spec will have a sharp gray finish. This is the gloss black with the double 5-spoke design. All independent suspension, all disc brakes that are around 12.2 inches in diameter for the front and the rear. The tires are 235 by 45 R19 on a Continental all-season tire. I actually think the wheels are a good size, but the tire could be a little bit wider. I'm assuming Acura chose that for fuel efficiency. The wheel arch molding here you can see is gloss black. That's included if you guys go for the A-Spec package, and then you can see the side silex, or the front splitter here, is a little bit more aggressive to give it that sportier look. The A-Spec badge here is included on this trim, obviously, and then the advanced package also includes the black painted side mirrors. And you also have the integrated turn signals, the cameras throughout. You can see more black along the window trim, and this panoramic sunroof is standard if you guys go for the A-Spec models and up. If you go for a regular ADX, you'll just have a standard sunroof. The pano roof is included on the A-Spec and up. So that's definitely a nice feature you typically can't find on the HR-V. So there are some nice touches that Acura obviously is including. Now, if you want to follow me over to the rear here, you can see the design definitely, I personally think, looks better in the front versus the rear. You do see some, I guess, influence here of the Integra, especially if you look at the rear taillight design. You can see they are a full LED taillight, which also includes an LED turn signal, LED brake lights. It looks like also an LED reverse light as well. You can see there's some A-Spec badging here, and then of course there's the ADX with the all-wheel drive badge there. Remember, this is not super handling all-wheel drive, it's just regular all-wheel drive. Now, down here at the lower fascia, you can see the bumper is a little bit more aggressive, especially on the A-Spec model. And you also have these dual chrome exhaust tips with the nice looking finishers, the nice oval look finishers. This is definitely an unexpected touch. Most new cars are kind of going to an exhaust system that's hidden. So I like how Acura, again, is kind of preserving that sportier old school feel. I also like the rear spoiler back here. There is a rear window wiper, although it would have been better if they tucked it underneath the rear spoiler. You can see you have your third brake light there, which is also an LED. And then in terms of the cargo area, you can see every ADX comes standard with a power liftgate. The upper trims add a hands-free function. This is a feature you can't get on the HR-V, so it's nice that Acura is including that. And then in terms of the cargo space, because it's bigger on the outside, you do have a little bit more space than some of its rivals. Around 24.5 cubic feet of storage space with the second row seats up, or with the back seats up. Look underneath here, you can see there is a little bit of an underfloor storage area, which is nice. And then if you look underneath there, there is a temporary spare tire, and you'll have basically the jacks and whatnot to be able to change the tire. If you want to fold down the seats, which Acura lets you do from, I guess you could do it from back here. It's a little bit tough, but if I fold the seat down there, you can see this kind of gets in the way. So let me go over here to kind of fold the seat down. Acura says that you get a maximum storage of around 55 cubic feet of space with the seats folded. Now, 55 cubic feet pretty much matches that of the Honda HR-V, which is kind of surprising because this vehicle is around 6 inches longer. But if you're looking at the competitive set, this has a lot more cargo space versus its main Japanese rival, the Lexus UX, although the BMW X1 has roughly the same amount of space. Now, moving into the interior of the first ever Acura ADX. Now, as you guys saw, the exterior definitely looks a lot like an Integra SUV. On the inside, this is where you're going to see a lot of influence, of course, from Acura's entry-level sedan. No surprise, because again, this is going to be kind of in that same price category. Now, this particular one that we're showing you here has a great color combination. It's that urban gray exterior color with the red interior. So this trim here is the only trim to give you the actual leather seats. If you guys go for the advanced package, you get the real leather with the cross stitching, of course, the black Alcantara, which these seats are also heated and ventilated. The passenger seat only adjusts in 4 ways power. The driver's seat at least adjusts in 12 ways. It has a 4-way lumbar support, and it also includes 2-person memory, which is again a feature you expect in a luxury branded vehicle. These seats are unique to the ADX, so it's not shared, of course, with the HR-V. But Acura also has a really interesting color option called Orchid with blue accents, which is available on this color and a white exterior color. Again, it is only offered on the advanced package, so there's a lot to get here with more customization if you guys go for the fully loaded model. Now, looking at the door panel, you can see the upper portion here has a soft touch injection molded plastic with a nice graining material. There's some more of that leather and the suede here. This is interesting because it's kind of like a glossy black with kind of a textured look and feel to it. Which is definitely different, adds a little bit of, something interesting there. This is a nice padded center console here. This lower portion is all hard touch plastic, but there's also these interesting ripples in the actual lower portion of the door panels. The window controls, they are one touch for all four, which is unexpected touch. You also have power folding mirrors, which is nice, and this particular model comes with the 15-speaker Bang & Olufsen stereo. So if you go for the other trims, you'll have an 8-speaker Acura premium branded system. If you're an audiophile, you're really going to appreciate the Bang & Olufsen audio system. Now, getting inside, this vehicle has roughly 7.3 inches of ground clearance, which is the same as the last HRV I tested. So you have this really nice, easy step-in height. As I get in and shut the door has a pretty solid sounding thunk, which adds to that level or impression of quality. Now, looking at the key fob, you can see this is Acura's current key fob. It's their intelligent access key with the Acura logo. It's definitely a nice size, a nicely proportioned key. It also looks good. You also have remote start on the fob itself, along with your lock, unlock, power liftgate, and panic function. The advanced model is the only one that gives you the remote start function, so kind of keep that in mind from the key fob. Now, when you want to start the vehicle up, stop button, here's where you'd expect it to be. And then when I start it up, you can hear this is not a hybrid or a mild hybrid, so it has a traditional engine starter noise, and along with the new Acura chime. Now, of course, once you're in this interior, it's going to feel very familiar to the last Integra, because in terms of the infotainment system here, it's basically just a copy and paste. All of the ADX models will come with the 9-inch infotainment touchscreen, which includes wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You can see my phone is hooked up via the wireless system here, and the graphics and resolution look decent. I like how there's a volume knob here and some dedicated hard buttons if you want to go back to the Acura system here. If you go for the advanced model, you'll also get Google built in with Amazon Alexa built in. So if the lower trims won't have Google built in. This is definitely a nice feature because, as you can see, when you pull up the map interface, it's essentially Google Maps, the same high quality satellite view that you'll find from your computer. So that's definitely a nice touch. I do think the screen is a little bit small. This is, again, the upgraded screen on the HRV, and there's not like a bigger 10 or 11 or 12-inch display available. I think that's something Acura should have done. You do get a 10.2-inch display here for the center, or for the instrument cluster. That's standard across the board. It's a little bit smaller versus the 12.3 we see in some of the bigger Acuras, but at least it is fully digital. The steering wheel is basically the same wheel from the Integra. It has a flat bottom design with the A-Spec badging. You also get a heated steering wheel on this trim only, along with these metal paddle shifters, which are standard equipment across all trim levels. They control like 7 virtual ratios with the CVT transmission. The steering wheel has a nice tilt telescoping function with a decent amount of adjustability, so I can kind of get into a comfortable driving position pretty easily. The one thing that this vehicle is missing, however, is a heads-up display. Now, I understand this is their entry-level SUV, but for a model that has the advanced package, I think a heads-up display would have been nice. You can get that in some of the competitors, so kind of keep that in mind. In terms of the rest of the materials, you can see there's this really nice actual leather stitching on this upper portion here with the contrast stitch. This upper portion here also has a soft touch injection molded plastic. This is kind of like a silver painted plastic, which almost looks like aluminum, but this is definitely just a fake material, but it looks really nice. I appreciate how it's not a piano black plastic. You have these air vents, which are traditional in the way they adjust the airflow. It also has kind of like the diamonds in the actual insert for the air vents, which look pretty nice. You have these dual zone climate controls with these big knobs for the fan speed, of course, the control here to control the temperature. You have actual buttons here for your heated and cooled seats. So I appreciate how it's a actual button. You can't even get cooled seats on the Integra, so it's nice how Acura has stepped up their game there. If I push this button here at the end of the stock for the windshield wipers, you can see that pulls up your 360 camera. That's included when you guys go for the advanced model. You can see it gives you multiple different curb views as well, and the graphic and resolution is pretty good. It also includes trajectory and parking sensors front and rear. It has rear cross traffic alerts. So this feature here is a nice feature to have, especially when you guys consider, again, the HRV doesn't even offer that. And Acura includes it as standard if you guys go for the advanced model. Now, all models will also come with a wireless phone charging pad. You can see it's also a pretty big size, where an iPhone 16 Pro Max, let me go ahead and put mine there, will fit kind of perfectly in that little spot. You have 2 USB charging ports. They're USB-Cs along with a 12-volt power outlet here. You can see your cup holders are interesting because they're kind of split up. You have one cup holder over here, which fits that water bottle holder or water bottle nicely. And then you can see there's another one over here. There is some piano black in this area, which does get fingerprints and scratches, but the textured portion is located over here on the side. There's also more leather around here with that aluminum look trim. The shifter looks like it was lifted out of a Civic or an Integra. It's a traditional shifter. There's also a sport mode here, no manual mode here. It's controlled via the paddle shifters here. And then your drive mode selector is this little toggle. You also have a downhill assist control. You can turn on and off the auto start, stop, defeat. And then you can see it has that typical sound when you're switching the gears. There's 5 different modes, from sport to normal to comfort, and then to a snow. Now there is no adaptive dampers on this car, so I'm surprised to see there is a comfort setting. The individual setting, basically if I push and hold it, will allow you to kind of adjust everything here, where you can adjust the engine, the steering, the engine sound, the idle stop, and then the gauge display. Look, the gauges do turn red when you put it into a sport mode there. Other than that, it's basically their fully digital display with a really cool graphical representation of the car. For the driver assistance features, you can see if I signal, it actually shows a turn signal in the actual car icon in the screen, which looks pretty cool. Acura Watch 360 is also included, so it has adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, automatic emergency braking, all that stuff that you expect in a vehicle of this, class and size. You can see there's a nice padded center console armrest here. If I open that up, you can see that's actually a pretty deep storage. All of my camera equipment fit in here pretty nicely, and there's still room to spare. So really happy with the additional storage that you're going to find in the center console area. The seats, like I said earlier, comfortable and supportive. The cooled function works really well. They also have decent bolstering. The red looks good, especially with the urban gray. And then if I open up the glove box, you can see it's a bin style. It's damped but not lined with felt. It offers it a little bit more storage over here, but overall the interior definitely has some nice materials, some good technology features, a huge upgrade obviously versus even the Integra. There are just a couple of features here that I would like to see: a heads-up display, and I also would like to see Acura replace this screen here with a bigger display. I just think that at this price category it should have at least a 10.3-inch display. And then above me here, forgot to mention, it does have that big panoramic sunroof, which also has a retractable shade, and I can also open this up completely to vent air, which is a nice touch. There's also a built-in wind deflector. This feature you can typically find in most of the competitors, but it's just a nice thing to find, especially as standard equipment if you guys go for the A-Spec trims and up. Now, if you plan to use the ADX as a family vehicle, this is where you're also going to find a little bit more space versus a lot of its European rivals, and that's because the ADX is larger in size compared to a lot of its German competitors. Now, first of all, you can see this bench seat obviously sits 3 people across. You can fold the seat down if you'd like, although it doesn't offer a recline function. Just like in the HR-V, when I fold the seat down, you'll notice the seat bottom cushion actually starts to move downward a little bit, and that's to help aid this thing have a flatter load floor. Now, I have to say, when the seat is folded flat, it does have a flatter load floor, but there's also still a little bit of a ridge over here, but this is still not bad. I like the fact that Acura, kind of carried over that little versatility function where the seat bottom cushion goes down. I just wish that this offered a recline function. You can find that in some of its competitors. Now, stepping inside the back seat, you can see the space back here is pretty generous. This is essentially my driving position here. Acura says you have around 37.7 inches of legroom back here. 37.7 is a good 2 to 3 inches more than a lot of its rivals. You can see the floor is almost completely flat back here. This essentially has the same legroom as the HR-V, which doesn't surprise me. The Integra also has pretty similar legroom specs as well. In terms of the materials, it is hard touch plastic back here, so it's downgraded materials. This is also hard touch plastic as opposed to having the leather stitching. You do have real leather here, and it's slightly padded where I would rest my elbow, which is nice. You have some silver painted plastic door handles here. The window controls, again, high quality feel. It's one touch for all 4. And then there's also a couple of nicer touches that you don't find in the HR-V. For example, you do get rear seat air vents back here, which is nice. Standard equipment on all trims. You have 2 USB-C charging ports. No heated rear seats, however, which is a little disappointing. You have 1 storage cubby here, and then you also have an armrest that folds down and gives you 2 cup holders. Remember, this is not on the HR-V, so there's a lot of features here that Acura is including by, again, going with the Acura badge. In terms of the headroom space, it is not the best. I am when I lean back here, I have maybe a solid inch or 2 of additional space. The panoramic sunroof obviously takes up more room. You do have some nice ambient LED lighting in here. So overall, again, compared to its rivals, there is a good amount of space back here, but just keep in mind the RDX will offer around 1 inch more legroom along with more headroom. And it's also a wider vehicle, but still for an entry-level SUV, this has enough space for a lot of average-sized adults. So Acura has needed an entry-level SUV for years. In fact, this is a car that consumers and dealers have been asking for way too long, so it's great to finally be behind the wheel of the first ever ADX. I still don't love the name of the car, but I love the principle of it. It's essentially just an Integra SUV. It's built on the same architecture. It has the same 1.5-liter turbo with the CVT, so we'll put the transmission in sport mode. The car's in sport mode. Let's go ahead and see what we can get 0 to 60-wise. Definitely didn't like brake torquing that much. All right, so we got 0 to 60 in 8.9 seconds. Now that's with it actually slightly going downhill. So I'm actually shocked because the last HRV that I tested with the 2-liter engine, naturally aspirated of course, also did it in around 8.9 seconds. So that time, very disappointing, although if we get another opportunity up ahead, if I could try another run, I'll try it. But that also kind of doesn't surprise me because this powertrain combination, it's a CVT. The 1.5 turbo is also a little laggy. You have to let the engine revs build up before you feel the turbo kick in. Although mid-range power is good, in this class of vehicle, this is definitely going to be among the slowest, which doesn't surprise me. In fact, the last Lexus UX300 that I tested with the new powertrain from the Prius, which has 6 more horsepower than this, did 0 to 60 in 7.2 seconds. So that is definitely not a great time. But once you kind of get past the 0 to 60 performance, how does the rest of the ADX drive? Well, of course, this is a bigger vehicle than its competitive set, around 8 to 10 inches longer than most of its rivals. I actually think that Acura made it almost too big because when I'm sitting here from behind the wheel, the width of the car, just the feel of the car, it feels like I'm driving an RDX-sized vehicle. It feels like I'm like kind of a class above, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It kind of gives the ADX more of a grown-up feel, a little bit more of a more spacious feel, which is probably what some people are looking for in this class of vehicles. So that could be a good thing. The brakes on the vehicle, they feel relatively responsive. There's not like a spongy feel to them. It's all disc brakes, independent suspension. Put my foot down here. It really reminds you that it's a CVT, and the engine also doesn't sound all that pleasant. So from an enthusiast perspective, you're not going to like the way this thing accelerates. Now, in terms of just everyday driving, because let's be honest here, most people in this class don't really care that much about fun driving dynamics and whatnot. This is where the ADX's chassis feels good. The steering in this car is electric power steering, obviously. It's a little bit light. Even in sport mode, it tries to get heavier. It still feels a little bit too light and numb. The suspension setup feels like it's properly tuned. The car has a nice balance between ride quality and handling. There's no adaptive dampers even on this advanced package. You don't typically find that in this segment. The seats are also nice. This is the only trim that gets the full premium leather seats, although they're not quite the Milano seats, leather seats you get in like an RDX, but they feel good. The cushioning is nice. The bolstering also does a pretty decent job at holding you in place. The steering wheel also feels nice. I like the contrast stitch with the flat bottom design. It has these metal paddles on the wheel as well, which if you pull the paddles here, Acura says it gives you 7 ratios, but let's be honest here. It tries to do a decent job at simulating gear shifts, and it is relatively responsive. When I pull the paddle, it actually does shift gears, but nobody is going to be using the paddles that much in a CVT vehicle because, again, they are fake ratios. There's 7 of them, but it is nice how Acura did the metal paddles. Those are standard equipment across all trim levels of the ADX. This is something that not even the MDX Type S has. So I'm hoping Acura will eventually put these metal paddles in something like the MDX. The one thing I did notice, however, is we were driving this vehicle out on the highway at speeds between 70, 75 miles an hour, and this thing has a pretty good amount of road noise and some wind noise coming in. Now, Acuras and Hondas have always kind of been historically known to have a little bit louder interiors versus its competitive set, so I was hoping that Acura would have made the interior quieter. I'll have to wait until I get one back home to test it out on local roads to see how the interior noise levels feel, in more of my local areas. But overall, the ride comfort is decent. Handling is fine. It's not the sportiest vehicle in the segment, but it's also not the sloppiest. But it is the slowest. So that is kind of a big ding to the ADX because I had high hopes for this 1.5 turbo. This is kind of where I think Acura should have considered putting the 2-motor hybrid system from the Civic Hybrid from the CR-V CR-V, from the Accord. It would have been a nice upgrade because that powertrain has more horsepower, it has way more torque, it also is much more efficient. This powertrain is rated at 25 in the city, 30 on the highway, and the last like 40 miles of driving we've been doing, this thing's been averaging around 25.7. On the highway, it was a little over 30, which was pretty good. And again, once I get one back home for a week, we'll be able to do more extensive testing. But also keep in mind, the hybrid UX from Lexus will easily do the mid 40 mpg mark all day long because of that hybrid powertrain. So it is very much a missed opportunity for Acura. I wanted them to consider putting the hybrid. Their response when I asked was basically most vehicles in the segment don't offer a hybrid, which they're right, but they could have stood out by offering a hybrid. So perhaps that's something they can work on in the future. I also would love to see them do a Type S variant of this car. Put the RDX's 2-liter turbo in this thing, give it the 10-speed auto with actual super handling all-wheel drive, and this thing would absolutely be a riot. I don't think it would actually happen. Remember, the all-wheel drive system in this car is not super handling all-wheel drive, so it can't do the true torque vectoring that you can get in some of the other Acura SUVs, but most people in the segment are going to find this to be pleasant. It's, you know, going to give you the traction you need when you're driving in snowy conditions, when you're driving in wet conditions, and then on a back road like this, it should also be able to still relatively put a smile on your face because of the, you know, neutral handling dynamics, the fact that it still feels relatively playful. It's around 3,600 pounds, so it's not the heaviest, but it's also not the lightest vehicle in the segment. It just has a really, again, unpleasant sound to it. It's not really quick when I put my foot down. It just makes more noise than forward thrust, but at least it finally has all the features that I want it to have. I mean, it has a heated steering wheel, heated and cooled seats, which the cooled function works really well. The advanced package also throws in the 360 camera. The Bang & Olufsen stereo also sounds good. So basically everything that I complained about in the HR-V where it was lacking some features, the ADX has, but of course it's gonna have that, but it's also gonna cost you a lot more, so kind of keep that in mind. But I mean, overall, as an entry-level vehicle, I think Acura has essentially nailed the comfort-oriented mission and the luxury and features-oriented mission. It's just Acura likes to sell themselves as the performance brand of Honda, and that's where the ADX definitely falls short. I mean, the A-Spec package looks great on the outside, it looks sporty, but it's definitely not the sportiest model out there. So, you know, make sure you kind of check out some, you know, like the BMW X1 M35i. There's also the Mercedes-AMG GLA 35. Even Audi's Q3 is going to be quicker than this car, though technically Audi doesn't make an SQ3. But if you're comparing this car to the Lexus, the ADX does have a lot more interior space and some really nice features, but just again, be prepared to drive around in a vehicle that's among the slowest in the segment, so you better not pick any fights with that CR-V hybrid or that Civic hybrid that's next to you at the light. So if you look at the sales figures, Acura kind of had a rough year in the US in 2024. Their sales were pretty much down across the board. So they desperately need a vehicle like this because, as you guys know, everybody tends to buy SUVs, and the company was sorely lacking a more affordable entry-level model because, as you guys also saw, the RDX has gotten more expensive and larger over the years. So after spending the day here driving the brand new Acura ADX, I have to say, while I'm still not in love with the name, remember Acura calls it the ADX because they essentially want to use it as a marketing term to say, we've got you covered from A to Z in their SUV lineup. This vehicle essentially fulfills my expectations of an Integra-based SUV. It obviously sits up higher than the Integra. It offers more interior space, more trunk space. It offers the availability of all-wheel drive, and that 1.5-liter turbo VTEC powertrain sounds pretty impressive on paper, but as you guys also saw, delivered very subpar 0 to 60 times of just under 9 seconds, making this vehicle the slowest in the segment. I'll have to wait until I reserve my final judgment when I get one back home to test for a full week, but again, most people in the segment may not care about the fact that this is the slowest vehicle because in the real world, the powertrain was mostly responsive. It just doesn't have the best sounds. It would have been really nice if Acura offered this vehicle with the hybrid powertrain from the Civic hybrid, of course, or the CR-V or the Accord. Now, in terms of the ride and handling, it's comfortable, but not the sportiest vehicle. The interior is full of really nice materials with high quality finishes and also some pretty impressive tech. I mean, it has all the tech features that I expect in a vehicle that wears the Acura badge. And because it's larger on the outside, it does offer more interior space. So I think for most people, you know, looking for a family car and you don't want to spend as much money as an RDX, the interior space and the trunk space is going to be a big selling factor for you. What's also going to be a selling factor is the price of this vehicle, because if you're looking to get your hands on the all-new ADX, this is essentially heading to Acura dealerships as we speak. And the company has already announced final pricing. You can get into the base model with front-wheel drive for about $35,000 plus $1,350 for the destination charge. That's actually really affordable. It's around $2,000 less expensive than the Lexus UX and around $5,000 less expensive versus most of its European rivals. So there's some value to be had here. If you guys want all-wheel drive, it's going to cost you $2,000 extra. The A-Spec model, I think, is the sweet spot. It's around $3,000 extra. So an A-Spec with all-wheel drive starts at around $40,000 plus, again, that destination charge. The advanced package that I'm showing you here is another $4,000 on top of the A-Spec model, so that starts to push the price between $42,000 to $44,000. Plus, of course, the destination charge. My test car here with the destination charge and the color upcharge and the accessories that it has, the front and rear side spoiler extensions, all in, this thing comes to around $46,860. So just under $47,000. Definitely makes it more expensive than I thought at the top end. However, if you guys keep in mind, the RDX starts at around $44,700. So this basically ends where an RDX starts, and it's also around $10,000 more expensive versus the HRV. So again, Acura has positioned this vehicle nicely in terms of pricing, in terms of size. I just don't know if they've done enough to make me as an enthusiast run over to my local Acura dealership to buy it. But again, if that doesn't matter to you, if you're just looking for a comfortable, spacious, luxurious, and sportier looking SUV out there that is a much more affordable price than a lot of its rivals, it's definitely worth a look. And I think that the company has delivered a vehicle that kind of sets the expectations for Acura as a brand, and it's also going to be able to attract those younger buyers into Acura showrooms. And as you guys know, a lot of luxury brands are desperately looking for that because they eventually want you to move into their more expensive models as you get older, as you need more space and more luxury. But with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2025 Acura ADX. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.